Okay, slide. Alrighty. So, first, let's start off with, let's talk about types of formative assessments. And first, let's talk about what is formative assessment. Formative assessments lets the teacher gather evidence from what students know and what still needs to be learned. It is important to give feedback, and it allows the teacher to absorb evidence from students' work. So this involves evaluations from students' work, and it is a circular, continuous process that involves student work. Also, feedback, instructional, and learning adjustments. So, us teachers, we gather information from students' work and awareness to know what is needed from them, but from also us teachers. We want to know what we need to do to fix that, to make the student reach their goal or learning skills. If we know something one or more student is struggling on, then we need to fix it by starting with simpler questions to challenging questions. Next, let's talk about the cycle. So the cycle is also in the book on your 4.1 chapter 4. So back to students, or delayed, specific, instructional adjustments, next steps, student activities. Then it goes on to gathering evidence of learning, informal observation, questioning, structure exercises. Then lastly, evaluate evidence, interpretations, absence of bias. It's always good to have students learn new things in a specific subject or to progress their learning. As an example, changing their learning while they're learning something new, because they see new relations in other assignments. Summative based formative assessments. So this is when the test is right in front of the student, such as tests, quizzes, papers, essays, projects, and homework. It is formal, meaning done in accordance with rules. This aims to evaluate student learning and academic achievement by comparing it at the end of the semester to the end of the year. So, for an example, benchmarks. This calculates on what a student has learned throughout the year to see if they have improved. Embedded formative assessment. This is mainly oral. It is conducted in day-to-day context. It is an ongoing real-time instruction. So this is also in class. Questions grab students' attention and gradually makes them want to be engaged in the topic. Another way to have students involved is a discussion. Discussions are always used to have students questioning one another, exchanging ideas, and clarifying issues. This hooks data during the classroom learning. This can include small group projects, discussions, and this helps us make informative decisions on individual or in the group. Low-level formative assessment. This involves limited basic principles. This can be as simple as a student taking a quiz and receiving feedback on what they got wrong or right. This is mostly formal and planned. Teachers are involved and standardized. You can also find these bullet points on your book on page 112. So, low-level formative assessments does not affect students on final grades. I wouldn't say as much, but it doesn't really involve in their final grade. This is just to see what a student needs more in learning. but this also allows us teachers to know where a student is at their learning skills. This includes homework, journaling, quick responses, activities, or group discussions. We have to ensure that tests and quizzes and exams are not the first material of them taking. We have to start them very simple questions and into challenging questions. High-level formative assessment is when both teacher and students are involved and fully combined ongoing gathering of evidence. These bullet points are also in the book on page 112, but this includes varied assessment, included objective, constructed response, and supporting an argument. Not just supporting an argument of like evidence that they have. This type of assessment is unplanned questions that are asked from in classroom learning. So this can be if the student knows what is being asked during a lecture or if they know what is going on. Both teachers and students are participating. When a teacher is asking the question, when students are giving the teacher answers in face-to-face. Okay. Now, so we are going to move on to characteristic of questioning. First bullet point we have is the questions that are fast-paced while instructing mentally has students work quicker or have an answer ready to the question. So here teachers rely on how a student answers a question while it is instructed, as teachers want to know if a student is getting the lesson or lecture and achieving their targeted skills. Next one is questions that are a little bit more difficult can have students react with the questions and elaborate with students. So this has students think a little more towards the question, such as a discussion. Example, this question: what is a major theme in the novel? Find evidence. This is going to have students look back to find evidence and to support their argument or their answer. Third bullet point is questions that require students to assess their own knowledge of the topics rather than regurgitating facts. So questions like describe the differences between a short story and a novel. They have more to look at. This can have a comparison or contrast of their answer, and these questions will help the student look back also into their book or reading that they had to support also their evidence. Questions can also be for one or more students, so if they are not paying attention, we will have to put it in of their inappropriate behavior of distracting a student or the class. So this can be a teacher repeating the same question to that individual that is doing inappropriate behavior and simply asking, Josh, can you please, Josh, can you repeat what I said? That way, this helps that one or more students to be reminded of what is being asked of them. Okay, now let's look at targeted reference. So, giving specific feedback is more effective. This is to help students throughout the process of an assignment, essay, or even homework. This is called targeted reference feedback. So make sure it's not just a simple short question. Add to the question that will have students respond and make sure they understand. Students are less likely to answer the question if students are less likely to answer the question if they don't understand, and what teachers will not know also understanding what a student knows of what is correctly being asked. This can be, for an example, a run-on question. And an ineffective way is not giving enough feedback to help students for what their goal is, or should be making more targets easily accomplished and praising them too often. They're going to be used to on if we don't give correct feedback to that student, they're going to think that what they're doing is okay instead of helping them improve. Scaffolding. This is when a teacher is working close with the student and providing quick feedback at each step of solving a problem. Now, an effective way is answering your own questions of having students answering instead of having students answering your questions. So, if I ask my students a question and if they don't know, and instead of me helping my students answer a question or just helping them in general, and I just give out the answer, they're going to rely on me giving the answer to them most of the time. They're not going to know what is going on. So, provide support for students by breaking big lectures as they progress towards stronger understanding and to get a greater independence. Examples are mini lessons, model or demonstrate, show students an example of what they will be learning, describe concepts in multiple ways, show them how to do it and tell them and let them do it on themselves. Give them practice. Okay, now we are going to look into self-referenced. This type of feedback is comparing students' work to their previous work, letting them know that they are improving or not. Compare the students' work or expectations with previous performance, showing students how they progress throughout the year or throughout their work from what they did previously. It helps them see the improvements they have made. And if they don't show progress work, then it's always good to tell them what else they need in that assignment or of themselves. Tell them to look back and to reread the question. An effective way is being basic, simple, and being straightforward instead of taking your time on a student's work will not have the student be able to know what they are improving on and what they need to know or that they don't. This will think it's okay with any feedback if you do not provide feedback on what other things they need. They're gonna think that it's okay every time that you say, "Oh, you could do better," but that's not gonna let them know on what they need to be better on. So it's always good to provide an appropriate feedback to them. Standards referenced. So, let's see. Questions being asked should be reflected on the teacher's learning targets. It's better to ask extra and spend more time with those who are struggling or difficult learning targets. The emphasis is on showing students on how their work compares with the criteria and standards, rather than their own previous work or how other students perform. Make sure to let the students know on where they are and where they should be in accordance with the benchmarks. An effective way is when a whole class is falling behind, not letting them know where they need to be in standardized tests will not help them. So it's always, once again, it's always good to give appropriate feedback and to help your students succeed. Make feedback timely, differentiate feedback as appropriate, engage students in generating and using feedback. Consider how students will react to that feedback.